Hi everyone, welcome to Mindful Conversations with me, Laura Maxwell. Today I am joined by Juliet Richards from the Parent Team UK. We are going to be focusing on the very interesting and controversial topic of social media. I hope you enjoy. Now, the Parent Team aims to educate us parents to become more skilled in their approach to raising children. They encourage parents to think and to act in ways that will harness real resilience in children and help them thrive in the most healthy ways. It is run by 4 women, Jenny, Juliet, who we have with us today, Anne and Victoria, and between them they have 9 children, ages between 10 and 20. I'm so happy to have Juliet here with us today. Thank you so much for coming on Mindful Conversations. And I think what we'll start with today is a bit of your background. I know previously you worked in the financial sector for JP Morgan, and then you decided to go into parenting. Well, tell us what happened.
I sort of became a parent. I had a great job at JP Morgan. It was really fun. At that time of your life, it's a really buzzy place to work, and I did the advertising across Europe and Asia. It was fun.
Okay.
And then the team changed, and all my lovely colleagues got distributed amongst the bank. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, I found out I was pregnant, and I wasn't very good at being pregnant.
Explain.
I was very, very tired.
What does that mean? Okay.
And I felt very sick all the time. And my husband, who's very good at these things, he said, "Look, it looks to me like you can't do both things right now. So let's do this baby and see what happens, and then we'll reassess." So I did that baby, and then I did another baby. And the second baby was much more challenging, because sometimes you don't know the kid you're going to get, do you? So I ended up with sort of 2 under 2, and it never really lined up to go back into
so
that.
You're very quick.
They're just a year and a half apart.
Wow, okay.
And so suddenly 2 under 2, 2 under 3, 2 under 4, and nothing really, the stars never aligned to go back to that corporate career. But it does make you think, all the women and men who do that full-time, full-on, all attention career, and then come home and they don't not have a full-on family at the same time. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a real juggle. Actually saying that as well though, staying at home with kids is a privilege and a luxury, and it can drive you mad. I found it very difficult to move from that environment to being at home with small children who, sorry boys, not desperately interesting at times. So I lost a huge amount of confidence in those early
I know that's
years.
really honest, and I think a lot of people would be nodding right now. But tell us what the catalyst was that made you go into such a different, it's so interesting how different JP Morgan is to what you do now.
Well, it's sort of not, because it's people, it's helping support, all of those things that I think women in particular are quite good at. The catalyst for me was was realising, looking at my sons and thinking, absolutely adore you.
Yeah.
And I have no idea what I'm doing. And that didn't fit with sort of the way that I like to approach things. If I don't know what I'm doing, I'll either not do it, or I'll go and find out how to do it better. Okay. So I went to do a positive parenting course, because I just found that, I'll give you this example, William's first words were no and bye-bye baby, which isn't desperately positive or optimistic or helpful. So I really wanted to, and I just didn't know how to interact with them. So I felt that I was always being very negative, very controlling, very containing to keep them safe and keep them out of trouble. And it was just at odds with the ways that I wanted to do it. So I learned how to do it.
So you went to do this course.
And I found it, transformative is a really strong word, yeah. But little by little I was like, oh, okay, this is really interesting. Mm-hmm. And so I trained to teach that course. And I did that for a number of years with another company. They've moved on. And so the 4 of us who were working there have set up our own company. Okay. And that sort of
covers. And how long ago was that?
So I've been doing this work for about 12 years, I would say. No, it must be more longer than that. So my son's now 22, actually, Laura. 22 and 20. And I probably started this work when they were 3 or 4. Oh, right. And then by the time they were 6, 7, 8, I was teaching it and helping other parents.
area that I really want to talk to you about today is the contentious area of social media. And it's something that I've been thinking about a lot recently, in terms of what I do, in terms of me posting and other people. And, you know, at what point is it unhealthy? And I was watching the Netflix documentary that I really recommend to everyone. It's called A Social Dilemma. Don't know if you've seen it, but it was hugely interesting, but very worrying. And the main worry was for the current teenage demographic today, but also, you know, I have young children, for the future teenagers. So in your experience, how worried should we be about this? Should we be is it as catastrophic as this documentary, for example, is painting? What's your opinion?
I would like to say don't worry, but I think we should worry. And I think catastrophic is a very strong word, and it sets off a whole limbic reaction in us, which is panic, which isn't going to help us as parents. But I think it has, if we talk about sort of social media, the internet in general, and I think you've always got to bring in maybe the more boy element, which would be gaming. Mm-hmm. So whether you're looking at sort of social media, gaming, the internet, the whole thing, mm-hmm. it has potential to be catastrophic. That's the real problem. But if we panic about it and get very negative and punitive and controlling about it, that's not going to help our kids learn how to navigate it, get the best bits out of it. So we've got to find a way to help them realise that there are risks out there. Okay. Regulate their own use. Okay. And get the best out. So social media I sort of love, because can you imagine lockdown with no social media? That's how we kept in touch with people. Right. There are some really good angles to it, but there are some really bad. So how we've got to look at how we teach our kids to do that.
And people have set up businesses, and you know, if you create your social media, it can be incredibly inspiring. Mm-hmm. And I follow some amazing people, but also very dangerous, very, very dangerous for young people that are easily influenced. So in your experience with your boys, how did you use that word quite a bit, regulate their usage?
So there are a few advantages in being older. First of all, they didn't really have much stuff, because they are about the same age as a smartphone, if you see what I mean, about 2022. That was when it was really coming in. So for me, they didn't really ask for it or get it. Their friends didn't have it until they were heading towards secondary school. Right. It's much harder now. Yeah. Because most of us have got all of these devices lying around in drawers. We don't, you upgrade, you don't always sell your phone on. And so your 4-year-olds, can I go on TikTok? And you're like, all right, I'll just show you. So they're much more widely available and accessible. That makes it really hard.
Should we not allow that?
We shouldn't.
Okay.
If you think about it, there are age restrictions on WhatsApp, Instagram, TikTok. And they're there for commercial and legal reasons. But they're also there to tell you these are not kids' things. They're just not. And the reason they're not is that you have to have the ability to self-regulate. Yeah. You have to have the ability, you have to have a strong self-esteem to go out into the social media world.
Totally. And you have to say, right, tonight I'm going to put my phone away and I'm not going to,
or go to the gym or a walk. Or,
As adults that are functioning, we are able to do that. But good point. I hope that we can. I definitely do try to. But definitely as children, it's going to be almost impossible.
Yeah. So you don't take them into a sweet shop and say, look at all these lovely sweets. Make sure you don't eat too much, darling. You just wouldn't do that. You'd say, look, you've got 50p or £1, you can have 250 grams, and this is you have to eat them before tea and then brush your teeth afterwards. We have no problem controlling their use of sweets. We don't let them drive. We don't let them, there are lots of things that we feel very weirdly different to think about social media and access, because it's so everywhere. So yes, we do need to be worried, but worried in a positive way, because if we panic, we're going to go all on them. And what happens when we negatively restrict and control their access? They just do it anyway behind our backs. Yeah. But I would seriously think, if you haven't already given your child access to the internet, and allowed them on social media sites, delay it for as long as possible.
Okay. How can we encourage our children, no matter what the age is, if they're staring at screens all day, they're not interacting in real time, to start living in the real life, to interact in real life, in real time? What activities can they do that's going to be most helpful, most encouraging to that part of their brain?
So first of all, you know when you see a child and they're just like staring, they're not actually just staring, they are doing something. They're looking, they're being curious, they're integrating, they're particularly teenagers.
Okay.
What's the job of a teenager is to search for their own identity, not the one that my parents have given me, but my own identity. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to look out, find my tribe, work out what I believe in, where I fit in, how I look, and all the rest of it. So yes, it looks a very dead sort of thing, but they're not just staring, they're engaging.
Yeah.
They're being curious, they're investigating. And so often on social media, in the moment, you feel really powerful and connected. And everybody loves to feel like that. So there's a really good reason they're doing it.
Okay.
Yeah. So if we don't recognise that first, what we do is we say, oh, don't be so stupid, give me your phone, why are you being so boring? Or, you know, so I think we have
to recognise what it's giving them.
To recognise that, one, it's hard to get off it, because the companies spend billions of pounds making sure it's hard to get off.
Yeah.
So that's not your child's fault. And two, to recognise that it gives them something. And then, rather than just take the phone away and say, well, you can't be on the phone, go and find something fascinating to do in the real world, we have to help them find that same engagement and connection and feeling successful and powerful. Children very rarely feel powerful, partly because we over-legislate, over-subscribe a lot of their activities. So it's about saying, well, how can we give them what they're getting from the phone or the social media in real life? How can we make them feel successful, engaged, powerful, curious, excited?
Can you give me maybe one example of...
I can give you, we could make any activity, domestic activity, more powerful, energetic and interesting and engaging if we prescribed less and regulated less. I'm not talking about not keeping your kids safe. I'm not talking about letting them have meal times of abandon and crazy health or manners or whatever. But I do think that we need to give kids more independence, more autonomy, and let them enjoy life in real life, whatever that may be.
So maybe an activity with less rules?
I think rules are really important because they keep our kids safe. But we do sometimes do an awful lot of don't do that, don't do that, don't do this, do it this way. Don't put those two blocks of Lego together like that, put them like this. It's Lego, doesn't matter how he puts them together. So I think it's in the way that we over-direct kids' play. We over-manage some of their day-to-day activities, which actually we need to teach them how to manage themselves.
Right.
Does that make sense? I think sometimes we need to back off some of the things that they do, because kids are wired to play.
Yeah.
And we say, don't do that, don't do this, you'll make a mess, have you been careful? Oh, you know. And so they go, well, that's a bit boring then. I'll go on my phone.
Yeah, makes sense. And I think there's a lot to be said with observing behaviour rather than interrupting behaviour, having an opinion the whole time. Just observe. And then if there's something that worries you, then bring it up. But, you know, you can have a day where you find yourself saying, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. And by the end of the day, you're just exhausted. And half of it you didn't need to say.
Half of it, maybe even more than half, but
Probably.
at least half of it you didn't need to say. And all of that negativity and controlling puts a huge amount of pressure on parents. And it makes us feel very negative. And the kids don't like it either. And if you think about risk and social media, how do you learn to assess risk? It's not by being told what's dangerous, it's by working out what's dangerous for yourself. So I'm not suggesting we go, here, go on social media and see what happens to you at all, but in little ways. And, you know, rather than saying to children, you've got to be careful, you can't do that and this, that, and the other, we need to be getting them thinking for themselves, what might happen if you decided, I'm trying to think of a real world, you've got a lovely playground outside, but in a playground we say to children, don't do that, you know, be careful, be careful, be careful. What about if we said to them things like, have you got that? Have you thought about this? Are you feeling steady? Is this a good idea for you right now?
We're just about changing the language,
changing
ever so
some
slightly.
of our language so that they get into self-assessment of risk and they say, ooh, feeling a bit wobbly up here, not sure this is the best thing for me to do right now. What can I do about that? I could ask for help or I could stop. And can you see how that little playground analogy might move on into social media and internet use?
Absolutely.
And
that's a very good analogy.
We're not controlling them, we're supporting them. And the most important thing, I think, for me, in terms of the risk out there on the internet and with social media and gaming, is that we want our children to recognise when it's not going well. And then what's the next thing you want them to do? Come and talk to you.
Yeah.
And if your first response is, well, I told you it was dangerous out there, give me your phone, they won't come and tell you.
No. How do we encourage a healthy self-esteem where we don't feel neither superior nor inferior to our peers?
Slowly over time. Self-esteem evolves slowly. And you're absolutely right that a healthy self-esteem can't involve a ranking or rating or comparison to somebody else. It's about you and your ability to say, I'll use the word good, but I'm a good person. And these are my areas and these are my strengths. These are my weaknesses. This is me. I'm a sort of being. So it can't involve comparison with other people. And I'm glad that you used the word encourage, because I think that's all parents can do, is help a child's self-esteem. Sometimes people say, how can I create self-esteem? Well, you know, that's a lot of pressure and it's not going to work. So self-esteem comes from all sorts of places. There's even a genetic component, sort of slightly linked to personality optimism.
Oh, really?
So people, well, that's what I'm reading, and they're saying that, you know, what they're like, they'll take years to discover the exact little gene. But you can see that if you were an optimistic person, the glass is half full. You'd probably have a slightly bouncier self-esteem than a pessimistic person. But what I'm saying is parents can encourage it, but we have to understand what it really is, which is an internal estimation of your value. And children will pick up how they assess themselves by how we assess them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely, it makes sense.
So if we are ranking our kids, and we all do it a little bit, don't we? Even between siblings, we're human. So we sort of rank and compare and contrast, and we need to avoid doing that if we possibly can.
At all costs,
our attention on our child and who they are and what they do for themselves. And, you know, one of the things we do as parents, are you going to confess? I'm sure you've done it.
I was going to say that, you know, you can say, but your brother never did that, you know, and as I'm saying it, I know full well this is so not right, but
you can't stop yourself.
In the heat of the moment, you know, if one child is being incredibly cheeky and naughty and the other isn't, you're like, well, look at your brother's not doing that. How does it work? Clearly a terrible thing to say, but we've all done it. And
we've all done it, and the kids will be fine.
Yes.
But if we can do it less,
and if we just notice that it's not helpful, we will do it. We will do it
less. I think so. When we're looking at our children and we're thinking, how do I motivate them to work harder? How do I motivate them to do whatever? I know. I'll compare them to their friend or their sibling. It doesn't work.
It doesn't
so
work.
If we want to motivate kids, we need to avoid comparison. But we need to avoid any estimation of our children being involved with other people.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, it translates to being an adult too. You know, comparing yourself to your peers, no matter what age, is self-destructive. And, you know, even my age, I do it sometimes. And, you know, I don't know if you ever do it. But
all the time.
Yeah. And, you know, I stop myself and I know that this is unhealthy. But it's something, I don't know if it's just something that we're all born with, this comparison thing. But it's a horrible feeling. And we need to somehow navigate away from it. It's just...
And girls are less good at it. And I think that's evolutionary-wise. we more need to bond and understand each other and work out where we fit in, because technically a boy could just sort of run faster or leap. I don't, there's sort of basic evolutionary. So girls and self-esteem. Girls are more vulnerable to lower self-esteem. We're less good at passing a fair and positive assessment on ourselves. We're more eager to work out how everybody else is doing. And of course, the other sort of demographic, really vulnerable self-esteem, is teenagers. Because that was the quest, the teenage quest, to go out and work out who you are and throw everything up in the air. And also you put teenagers and girls together, and that's
this is why social media is so dangerous at this point. When I was a teenager, if I had to deal with Instagram, it would make it a whole lot harder on a different level.
The teenage quest is pretty tough. I've got to move away from my family. I've got to work out who I am and where I fit in. And we did it in the real world. It was pretty challenging, but nobody was watching. No. You could go home and you could just pretend it hadn't happened. But our kids can't. If they're left out publicly. If they do anything wrong, it's out there. They're ranked, they're rated, they're compared, and I think that's super, super hard. But we gave that virtual life to them.
But we have, I'm going to delay it. My children are 7 and 10, and they don't have a phone, and I'm delaying it as much as I possibly can.
You've probably got a little bit of time.
Yeah, I would say 13 is when I have to start thinking.
I think you'll get the pressure quicker than that. I think it will come sooner than that, but that's okay, because when kids pressure us for something, we don't give it to them.
No.
I'd like the keys to your car and a bottle of vodka. We don't go, oh, okay, then we don't fold. So we do have to withstand that pressure, because they want to fit in with their peers.
And who knows what's going to happen? In your opinion, where do you think this can't just keep building and getting bigger and bigger and bigger? So what's going to happen? What's the future of platforms like Instagram and TikTok, the ones for the younger kids?
Well, not for the younger. Look at the age ratings. They're 13 plus, aren't they? But yes, they're very attractive to younger kids. I think not much will happen in my fantasy life. Parents will get together, we'll talk more with each other, and act more collaboratively. That idea of it takes a village. It certainly takes a digital village. To think about play dates with kids. So you've got your 2 lovely boys, and you invite another couple of lovely boys to come around and play here, and one of them brings a phone. So we need to have sort of rules and things about that. We need to work with other parents. What works for you? What are you doing? How are you handling it? We need to be much more open and supportive, and have a real dialogue with other parents. But I also think, and I'm not doing it personally at the moment, but in many ways parents need to really lobby government and say, we need you to protect our kids. We'll do it at home, but you need to work with us on the other side. And I would love to see things like, that we've got this new bill coming. I would love to, they can lock down and trace things on these sites, and they're not doing it for children.
Well, that is definitely something that we need to discuss, maybe in another session. But this has been super interesting. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really, really appreciate your time. And as I was saying before, Juliet runs the parent team. Do you want to tell how you can get in touch with you?
Yes, you can get in touch with us. It's we thought it was a really cool website address, www, everybody's got that bit, theparent.team.
Okay, theparent.team.
So theparent.team. And there's lots of information out there, and we're always happy to chat with parents. It's one of our favourite things to do.
Okay, so that's brilliant. So if anyone wants to get in touch, there you have it. Thank you so much, and see you next time.